Did you buy Bitcoin in 2013?
No, I bought Bitcoin much earlier than that. I was a very 2013 is when I was in the Forbes 30 under 30, and they asked everyone on it for a quote for the print edition, and it was the theme was, what is your advice to other young founders? And my quote was, buy more Bitcoin. But I've actually been involved in Bitcoin since before there were any exchanges. I was a true OG on the bitcointalk.org forums. There were no exchanges. You could only do direct transactions for goods. I actually sold a banner ad on my game console modification forum. It was a 1 week banner ad on this forum with almost no traffic, and I sold it for 400 Bitcoin. And then I ended up buying someone's Samsung Galaxy Vibrant, which was the T-Mobile variant of the first Galaxy phone, for 800 Bitcoin, I believe, which at the time was well under $1 per Bitcoin.
Right.
So I've actually been in
16 million
the
today,
very early days.
16. Oh my God. So like, all right. We had biology on the pod, and like he was one of these guys where he would like give an analogy. He was like, oh, Bitcoin is kind of like the Battle of Thames, and I'm like, bro, I needed an analogy for your analogy. Like, I can't tell you about the Battle of Thames in World War II. Like, I can't have that conversation with you. And you're a little bit like that, where you're talking about like, you just like threw in a few lines, like, oh, this gaming forum I have. When I was like, well, I could go down that path. And then you're talking about like this boat marina thing. And I'm like, that's a whole conversation. Like, how on earth you discovered that? And then I'm sure you have strong opinion. You just have a very, and then now obviously you're doing government stuff. Then you've done, and you know a bunch about politics, whatever. How are you becoming so well versed and also so opinionated on such a broad set of topics?
Because you have to. Most of the time, like the best things that I have done in my career have not been going super, super deep on one vertical and then finding the really, really hard gains that are at the end of a long fight that everyone's made. Like an example here would be with just like optics technology. Most people are fighting way at the end of the spectrum where they're trying to like, oh, we're using new cutting edge materials that increase the ability to control light more precisely by 2%. And we're trying to figure out the physics of how we can manufacture these polymers. Most of my best ideas have not come from that. They've been from knowing things in totally different fields that have nothing to do with the field, or at least people don't think they do, and then pulling ideas from those fields and applying them in a new way. Like the really key thing that made the Oculus Rift work, is just one example, rather than focusing on trying to make these optical stacks that cost thousands of dollars and weighed a bunch. And that was really what was making these headsets weigh many pounds and cost tens of thousands of dollars. It was the high-end optical stack that was able to project images on your retina with minimal distortion. But you needed a bunch of lenses. They're all very, very expensive, very high precision. What I did is figure out that you could just render a distorted image, basically render your image, distort it on the graphics card in the inverse way that the lens distorted it. And then basically you would render an image that looks terrible on the screen, but after viewing it through the lens that I had, which was optimized for high field of view, low weight, low cost, but not optimized to have low distortion, low chromatic aberration, or geometric aberration, it would come out looking perfect. And like that's something where an optical engineer, someone who's working on just optics, would not think of that. That's very much like a software idea, but the software people are also not necessarily thinking about how they could obsolesce expensive pieces of optics. And of course, there are people who do that. I think that some of the best entrepreneurs are people who have understanding that is sufficient in enough areas to pull from one area and solve the biggest problems of another. So I make it a priority. You asked, how do I do it? You make it a priority to know a little about a lot.